I just got back from Belarus, so later in this hour, you're going to watch a rare interview with President Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko is a close ally to, maybe best friends with, Russian President Vladimir Putin. I asked Lukashenko what he thinks about President Trump, what he thinks Trump needs to do to end the war in Ukraine. Also, the War Department has released videos of strikes in the Caribbean, but now says it will not release the September 2 double-tap video strike. Why not? What's the big secret? Plus today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio both were quizzed by lawmakers, but we, the public, have a lot of questions. And also coming up, the BBC in the hot seat, President Trump threatened to sue, and now he has done it. Why the president wants billions in a payout from the BBC. The president is also declaring a new weapon of mass destruction. What is it? But first, it's day 4, and the FBI still can't find him. He's armed. He's a killer. He killed 2 students and shot 9 others at Brown University. The FBI detained 1 person on Sunday, a 24-year-old man with ties to Cedarburg, Wisconsin. He was released hours later after authorities conclude that the man was not linked to the shooting. Since then, the FBI has released surveillance photos and videos of the suspect. John DePetro joins me. He is the host of the John DePetro Show and is a crime reporter in Providence, Rhode Island, home to Brown University. Thank you for joining me. And can you tell me the very latest on this manhunt? The guy is obviously armed and dangerous.
He is, Greta. Good to be with you. So I'm at the Providence Public Safety Complex. You can hear some of the noise in the background. We're awaiting a 5 o'clock press update. And the administration, the mayor of Providence, the police, they want to be transparent. They want to try to give out new information. As you know, they just released a video where now the FBI, they seem to be getting more video of someone, a person of interest that was in the area that they happen to think they'd like to talk to, who may in fact be the shooter. So everyone is hungry for more information. But Greta, right now at this hour, I don't think that we're going to get an answer coming up. This person definitely is still on the loose. The manhunt is very, very active.
Did he say anything when he walked into that room and started shooting people?
I asked that question yesterday. We'll ask it again today. Now, from what I've learned, Greta, there's discrepancies. Some witnesses believe they heard one thing. Other witnesses said they couldn't make out what he said. There seems to be a consistent report that the shooter said something, but from what I understand and talking to police sources, they're hesitant to come out and give a definitive of what the individual may have said, simply because a number of people in the auditorium, and it's a large auditorium, that many of them didn't hear it or they heard something differently. So I think because of the way the police kind of got spooked on Sunday with this person that was then, detained, person of interest, I think now they're just being very guarded, close to the vest as to what exactly this individual said. But apparently he did say something.
Why did they pick up this guy in the first place? They detained the guy and they sort of set out the word that things might be a little bit safer, or suggested by detaining somebody, and then they let him go.
Well, the way this broke down was this was mass confusion, unfortunately. So I was on the scene Saturday afternoon right after this happened. Saturday night, the first priority was to evacuate all the students. The Providence police, other police forces, they had some problems with security trying to get all the students out of the building. So that was priority number 1, was to remove and evacuate all the students, because you had an active shooter situation. Then in the middle of the night, 3:45, suddenly there's a Southern police force, and they said, there's someone that's been staying near here and they're somehow connected to Brown University, and they applied apparently for a gun license. So they wanted a license. So then you had the FBI, U.S. Marshals, they go down, and then the FBI, Kash Patel. I was at the press briefing, Greta, on Sunday morning when the Providence colonel, Oscar Perez, seemed caught off guard that the FBI had announced that they had someone who was then a person of interest who was being detained. As a result of that information, the president of Brown University, Christina Paxson, she said that all students could then leave. So all potential witnesses that could have been there essentially left the campus. As the afternoon went on, they pieced together this individual. Maybe some things were odd, but it was not the person they were looking for. So the investigation, unfortunately, really started yesterday morning. And then during the course of Saturday night into Sunday, we had about 1 to 2 inches of snow, and it's been bitter cold. So although we're saying it's day 4, the investigation is really just in its second day.
Was anything left at the scene? Anything from the gun? And did the killer leave anything at the scene? And did he have his face covered?
You know, here's the thing, Greta. This individual, and with the video, you'll see it. It's reminding me, and I'm hearing this from law enforcement. Now, I covered the Boston Marathon bomber, and that did take 4 days before then they said, you know, here's two different individuals, and person one in the black hat, person in the white hat. This seems to be more like the DC pipe bomber that they just arrested. Think about that. That took 5 years. This individual is very cautious. He was walking around. He was near where he was going to enter 2 hours prior. So what I think is interesting is there's several things about that. Number one, notice he walks with his hands behind his back. That is not how young American students kind of carry themselves. From what I understand, that seems to be more of a European trait, maybe even Middle Eastern. But this individual is walking around. A member of law enforcement said to me, if you were a student at the school or known to people, you wouldn't want to be hanging out in front of the building you're about to go into or someone may recognize you. So he's basically pacing around the block almost for 2 hours and then finally enters and then very quickly gets out of there. Right now, Greta, now they have flock cameras in Providence and they've been very successful in solving a lot of crimes. I have not heard that they've been able to link an automobile with this individual. So it's very possible. And the amount of presence, I was on the east side all day today. I've been on the east side actually since Saturday. It is like a military camp. It's a huge police presence. There were 450 police officers on the ground on Saturday. Right now, they seem to think that this individual walked over to where he was. Now, after he left, on Sunday, everyone was then going home. And then Brown canceled all final exams, projects, classes. So it's very possible. Now, keep in mind, this is an international school, far more than other colleges. Providence College, not so much. URI, not so much. But with Brown, it's very possible.
Brown, it is.
The individual, Greta, that they're looking for, this person could be overseas. This could turn into an international manhunt.
Yeah, again, you're not far from Boston Logan Airport,
No.
about 50 or 60 miles. John DePetro, thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
And we have,
Good to be with you.
And we have breaking news just coming in. Last night, an MIT professor was shot dead in his Brookline, Massachusetts home. The Norfolk District Attorney's Office says this morning 47-year-old professor Nuno Loureiro was pronounced dead. Reports say the victim was Jewish with pro-Israel views. The shooting happened 50 miles from the shooting at Brown University. Authorities say no suspect is in custody. Now to the White House, where President Trump has declared a new weapon of mass destruction. That weapon, fentanyl. White House correspondent Mike Carter joins me. Mike?
Hey, Greta, good afternoon. Well, also jobs report numbers out today showing, and remember, these were delayed because of the government shutdown in October, 105,000 jobs lost in October. Economy also adding 64,000 jobs last month. So it is a little bit of a mixed bag there, while unemployment rate ticking up to 4.6%. Caroline Levitt, though, saying today about these job growth numbers, job growth going to Americans as foreign-born employment keeps declining. Almost all economic data, of course, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Census Bureau has been delayed due to October's federal shutdown. The latest numbers also showing, though, Greta, the black unemployment rate reaching 8.3% last month. That's the highest it's been since September of 2021. The job numbers coming today as the president is expected to name a new Fed chair in the coming weeks. Now, this morning, I asked White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett, considered a top contender for the job, if he lends any credence to the criticisms he's facing that he's, quote, too close to the president to be considered independent enough to lead the Fed.
Kevin, what do you make of the criticisms that you are too close to the president to be independent enough to be considered the next Fed chair?
Well, it's true that I'm close to the president. We've worked together closely since 2017. I think that the idea that being close to the president and serving the president well disqualifies someone for any job, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, meanwhile, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is pushing back today over a Vanity Fair article she says was disingenuously framed as a hit piece that selectively quotes her from 11 extensive interviews with Vanity Fair over the last year. In the article, Vanity Fair writer Chris Whipple writes of Wiles, quote, "Trump, she told me, has an alcoholic's personality. Vance's conversion from never Trumper to MAGA acolyte, she said, has been sort of political. The vice president, she added, has been a conspiracy theorist for a decade." Wiles responding to the Vanity Fair article on X, saying, "I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team." Meanwhile, here's what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told me about the White House's response to the article.
As for the Vanity Fair article, Michael, I'll take your question directly. This is, unfortunately, another example of disingenuous reporting, where you have a reporter who took the chief of staff's words wildly out of context, did not include the context those conversations were had within. And then further, I think the most egregious part of this article was the bias of omission that was clearly present. And we see a lot of this when dealing with the media every day. You will leave out important context, leave out comments and facts. You know, many people in this building spoke with that reporter, and those comments were never included in the story, probably because it didn't push this false narrative of chaos and confusion that the reporter was clearly trying to push. So what I'll say about our chief of staff, as you've seen from not just myself, but also the entire cabinet and a groundswell of support from people on Capitol Hill who don't even work in this building, about how incredible Susie Wiles has been to President Trump. And he's been able to accomplish so much because of his leadership and his tenacity, but also because of Chief of Staff Wiles's leadership and her ability to effectuate his agenda. So thank you.
And Greta, as you mentioned, President Trump issuing an executive order on Monday, now classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Of course, this is on the heels of the president's recent push on those Venezuelan vessels coming out of the Caribbean and everything the Trump administration is doing to try and halt that illicit drug. Tomorrow, President Trump heads to Dover, Delaware. He'll participate in the dignified transfer of those 2 National Guard soldiers that were killed in an ISIS attack over the weekend. And the president expected to make a 9 p.m. speech tomorrow night. We're not exactly sure what this will be covering, Greta, but President Trump on Truth Social says, "Today, I look forward to seeing you then. It has been a great year for our country, and the best is yet to come." 9 o'clock speech Eastern time tomorrow night from President Trump. Greta?
Mike Carter at the White House, thank you. Coming up, will the Trump administration release the video of the double-tap strike on the alleged drug boat? What Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said when the record continues.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed the House about the September 2nd double-tap strike on an alleged drug boat. Before that briefing, Hegseth spoke to the media.
In keeping with long-standing Department of War policy, Department of Defense policy, of course we're not going to release a top-secret full, unedited video of that to the general public. Hask and appropriate committees will see it, but not the general public.
Texas Congressman, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCaul, joins me. Good evening, sir. And I must admit, I don't buy that policy says not that it's top secret, never released unedited. They've released about 4 or 5 videos already of these strikes in the Caribbean. So why can't we see this one?
Yeah. Well, I'd argue, why can't the relevant members of Congress on the national security committees like the Foreign Affairs Committee see this? We had a classified briefing with all members today. The video is not shown. But I will say, Greta, I mean, that issue aside, I think this has been a tremendously successful campaign in the Caribbean. According to Marco Rubio today, I don't think this is classified, they've seen a 90% deterrence in these vessels coming from Venezuela. He said it's not a lack of desire to hit them, we're just not seeing them anymore. And remember, this is in international waters, and these are designated terrorist organizations.
All right. Well, first of all, I mean, they make me very suspicious when they won't show me a video that they've shown other videos. They won't show you the video, so it's fair to be suspicious. Their success rate, I'm all for that. But it makes me suspicious of all their numbers. Why don't they just show this?
Oh, I think, I found in my 22 years up here and chairing committees that, honesty and transparency is always the best way to go. I think the president's instincts on this were absolutely correct when he said, yes, we will share the videos with Congress. And I think went as far to say with the American people, unless there's something in these videos that we don't, they don't want us to see. So I can't answer it until I've seen it to speak intelligently, but certainly the members of the national security committees should be able to see this video. So I tend to agree with you. I think transparency is always the right way to go.
Well, first of all, he called it top secret. That's easy to change. Anytime you don't want the people to see something, you call it classified or top secret in this city. And the fact that they've released other ones, I get hiding the way we collected evidence or how we know they're narco-terrorists. That's classified. But once we go out and strike a boat, and then we strike it again, and we've seen these other videos, now I think they're hiding something from me.
Right. If the videos in any way compromise our national security, capabilities, technical capabilities, that sort of thing, I can see them not wanting to release it, and maybe that's what they're concerned about. I'm sure they're probably running this through legal counsel and the lawyers about whether it can be released or not. But the operation itself, though, from top to bottom, has had lawyers all the way. It's used exquisite intelligence to determine a couple things. One, that there are drugs, that are weapons of war really coming from Venezuela into the United States. Two, that they are operated by designated terrorist organizations. That's very, very important. In fact, we heard today that many of these vessels have not been struck, but rather interdicted because they could not confirm that the cartels that have been designated terrorist organizations were on these vessels. So I think there has been a great deal of care put into this process. And, the end result, if 90% of the cocaine and fentanyls coming out of Venezuela are not coming in the United States, I'll take that one.
Well, more people are killed by fentanyl every year than 9/11 on one day. I will concede that's 80,000 to 3,000. But anyway, we'll see if they change their mind. Congressman Michael McCaul, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Greta. Thanks for having me.
President Trump is suing the BBC. He is accusing the British broadcaster of defamation as well as deceptive and unfair trade practices. Here is the president.
They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words, talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news.
Now, this is what the BBC put out and what Trump actually said.
We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
In response, the BBC says it will defend the case but will not comment further on an ongoing case. Last month, the BBC apologized to President Trump but rejected his claims of defamation. The BBC chairman called it instead, quote, an error of judgment, end quote. Last month, after the broadcast, the top bosses at the BBC resigned. Coming up, part 2 of my interview with Putin friend, President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. That when the record continues.
A new president is sworn in. America's greatness is restored. Millions of Americans are tuning in to Newsmax. Even President Trump says Newsmax is terrific. Watch Newsmax or download our free app on your TV or phone today.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. Please make a great gift. It's Trump time.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
Michael is our youngest.
At 1, we found out he was profoundly deaf.
Then told he's also going to go blind.
He has Usher syndrome, a rare genetic condition
causing him to lose his vision and hearing.
There's no treatment. Most doctors have never even heard of it.
Every day feels like a race against time.
And finding a treatment would change everything.
When I first decided to invest in gold, I was a bit nervous and unsure how to start. Luckily, I found Noble Gold Investments. From the very first call, they made investing easy. No pushy sales tactics, no gimmicks, and no confusing free silver offers with hidden fees. Just honest advice tailored to my needs, giving me confidence every step of the way. If you're new to gold investing or want a partner you can trust, visit noblegoldinvestments.com.
What a day in college football.
This is the playoff. Nothing here will be easy. There will be comebacks and upsets, dynasties and dark horses. So lean in, flip out, and strap in for some campus chaos. 12 teams, one epic finish. This is the wild world of college football. First round coverage of the college football playoff begins Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on TNT and HBO Max.
Belarus is a landlocked nation isolated from the West with extremely close ties to Russia, including providing support for Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Over the weekend, I traveled inside Belarus, where I spoke with the country's president, Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko served in the Soviet army and has been the leader of Belarus since 1994. Lukashenko had a lot to say about the United States, President Trump, and what comes next for Ukraine. Here's part 2 of my interview. If Donald Trump, our president, is so able and powerful as you say, what will it take for him to resolve Ukraine?
It's not an accurate question, I'm afraid. It doesn't depend on Trump only. If it depended only on Trump, then the war probably would already be over. But we have two conflicting parties, the Russian Federation and Ukraine, and also us are being dragged into the conflict because we are living at the border with these two countries. We are not indifferent to what is going on and how the war will be finished. So this is a multilateral process. And Trump alone won't be able to resolve this issue. I talked with him before his meeting in Alaska with President Putin, and I told him that this process, this period, won't be short, and everyone must be ready for very hard and lengthy work. You won't be able to resolve the issue very quickly, and that's how it's going on right now. I told him that it would be good to make every effort to find points of agreement with Russia and to agree on the end of the war. They must stop shooting, they must stop active military actions when people are not dying, when people are not being shot, which, by the way, is mentioned by President Trump a lot. You can talk for months, for years. The Soviet Union and Russia right now are talking with Japan still, since the Second World War, and that doesn't impede the cooperation between them. When there is no war, when there is no shooting, people are not dying. So for us, the main task is to stop the massacre, to stop the deaths of the people. And it is important to guarantee that when the war is over, especially in the period when Russia is winning, and this is the fact, we've discussed it yesterday as well. So for Russia to have certainty, Ukraine and its army should not be getting new weapons. The Americans and the Europeans should not supply Ukraine with new weapons, with more weapons. So this conflict must be frozen. We must stop the deaths of the people, and then we can talk about everything, about the territory, about everything else. The main thing is to prevent deaths of the people. Here in this room, by the way, the negotiations of 2015 took place. In February, we've hosted these negotiations right here. Merkel, Hollande, Putin, Poroshenko, they were all here and we were talking here, and we came to an agreement. But the Europeans took a very stupid position then. They wanted to, as Merkel said, give the Ukrainians the time to get more weapons, to be ready to fight with Russia. So, again, they came not to speak about the peace, but to get ready to another war. Still, the agreement was concluded, and the Europeans were present, but this agreement ended with nothing. And I warned them that the Americans must be a part of this process, because without America, peace is not possible. But if then the agreements were implemented, we wouldn't have war right now. Trump is absolutely right here. He is quite open about it. He says, if I were president then, there would be no war. And I agree. But we see what happened, and now very much depends on the position of the United States of America and President Trump. The main thing for President Trump to stick to this position. He has a character, he is quite impulsive. Sometimes it is important for him to stick to this position, not to give up. If he is going towards this goal, we will see the results.
President Trump has been disappointed with President Putin. He's been disappointed with President Zelensky. What will it take? What does President Putin want?
Putin Putin, I am absolutely confident that Putin wants peace. I won't list the reasons because you know them well. There are domestic reasons, there are external reasons, and I believe Zelensky also wants peace, especially right now. He wants peace. But their opinions on how this war must end are very different. But Trump is right when he says that we must consider the reality, the real things that are going on within this conflict, in this war. We must look closer to the results of the war in terms of today's reality. If Ukraine believes that it can win Russia over Russia and fight it, well, let them fight. But in my opinion, and I believe that President Trump also has this position, if this war continues, Ukraine might cease to exist. We won't have such a country on the map of the world. But the most dangerous thing is that this conflict will go on, and if the escalation is still there, the consequences might be very hard and very dangerous for Europe and for the entire world. It will escalate into a global conflict. That is why we must extinguish this conflict right now, when we have the opportunity, and now we do have this opportunity when the Americans are seriously involved in the resolution of this issue. It coincides with the interests in foreign policy of America. Not a single other conflict in Taiwan or everybody else are not more important than this one. Because let me repeat one more time, the continuation of this war may lead to a global war, a global conflict, and we must prevent it. Because this war will use every kind of weapon that the countries have.
One thing that I think most Americans don't know, and you can probably explain this to me, is this, is what is it that President Putin wanted in the beginning? What was he seeking to achieve? How did he feel slighted?
Americans don't know this because you didn't tell to the Americans the real reasons for the war. I will provide you with an example that I usually give to people. Mexico is near you. This is the same situation with Russia and Ukraine. They're close together. A large country, a powerful country, United States of America, similar to Russia, have huge possibilities. And if Mexico had if Mexico would make Americans who are living in Mexico, especially close to the border, or those who are pro-American, if they were forced to speak only Spanish and not use English, their children would be bullied in the schools for them to also use only Spanish, and, God forbid, burn a house with Americans inside in Mexico. What would you do? You would do everything possible to fight Mexico. God forbid this from happening. This is just an example. This is the same situation with Russia and Ukraine. Why would you strangle people living in the east of Ukraine and make them, force them to stop speaking Russian? People should be able to choose the language they speak. And if you want the Ukrainian to be present there, well, you have to plan for continuous work, step by step, start from the kindergarten, in the school, and public service, government service. But they decided to shut up the Russian-speaking people. And it's the whole East. And moreover, in Odessa, and this is a fact, they have burned people whom they considered to be their enemies, the ones that were speaking the Russian language. And this is the policy which became the main aim for Ukrainians. And me being a politician for so long, if you are living close with this sleeping bear Don't wake him up. Find good ways to communicate and to coexist. And I know, I've seen and I've participated in these negotiations. Russia agreed with Ukraine on the issue of Crimea and on the issues of security and the military bases in Crimea. Ukraine didn't need them. They agreed that it would be Russian. And the energy resources were twice as cheap for them as compared to those in the world. Yeltsin and Putin, they had, well, the relationships were great. And no, they chose to create Maidan. They fighted against the acting president. He had to run. And so on. A lot of reasons can be mentioned, and they won't be in favor of Ukraine, but this is not the fact.
If I understand you correctly, earlier you said that if Trump had been president, the war would not have started. Is that what you said to me?
I am convinced in this fact. If he stick to the policy he is doing now.
But on the other hand, Ukraine, if President Zelensky were sitting here, he'd say the war started in 2014 with Crimea. It started then.
Well, Greta, this is a good question. No war in Crimea ever happened. Today, Zelensky and the government of Ukraine say that Crimea is Ukrainian. Well, Crimea is a pearl, independent to whom whose it is. It is a wonderful place. So they say that it's war there. Well, the war is when people fight against each other directly, but there have no shootings from Ukrainians in Crimea. And why would Russians shoot there? Because they freed Crimea. Nobody fought for Crimea. Nobody fought or shoot anyone. I saw it with my own eyes.
But they annexed it. They annexed Crimea.
This is an issue. We can call it annex, we can call it free, we can call it capture. This is a philosophical question. But if this is your ground, this is your territory, why do you not protect it? The Ukrainians gave it away. They just simply gave it away to the Russians. And I spoke about it previously. Russians were wise in their actions there. They agreed with those who had to protect Crimea, and in this way it was handed to them, as you call them, to the green people.
How would you end this war?
Well, any war always concludes in the peace, and this war will also be concluded with peace. The earlier we do that, less people will be killed. So I'm a man, and I always say, well, yes, someone died, but we have to look into account how many people get back home injured.
But how would you actually get Putin and Zelensky to be at peace?
Oh, you know, I believe the environment, the situation around these two presidents will just push them closer to concluding peace. Well, do you think Russians like the war happening? Of course not. If it's going to escalate, this can mobilize, this can lead to mobilization, which means that population will be involved in it even more. Will that be good for Russia? Of course not. Well, Putin keeps telling me that people fighting against each other are actually the same people. So Zelensky should understand, and I believe he understands, that this will end in Ukraine ceasing to existence. And these factors, as well as the pressure from Trump and external pressure, and if they don't come to agreement now, the external pressure will be even higher and harder. And the presidents understand that they have to stop. They need to make an agreement, but there have to be guarantees. Russia wants guarantees forever. And I know that. Russia wants to conclude such a peace agreement that the war never starts in the future. Ukraine is also for that, and Trump can be a guarantor for that. And we need to intensify our efforts, and we need to speed up. And Trump pushing them, pushing Zelensky, because Zelensky doesn't want to come to agreement, because Europeans are now involved in that. And they are telling to Zelensky that they're going to help him to fight, but they won't do that. They don't have the resources which we can compare to the resources of USA. And if Americans stop working in that sphere, the escalation...
So what happens if President Trump gets discouraged and just walks away from this?
The war will go on. The war will go on until the forces in Ukraine will make the president come to peace, come to agreement when they will be losing. And this is what we see now beginning.
Coming up, the United States Embassy in Lithuania had a big role in helping to free the political prisoners with the special envoy. You're going to hear how the embassy helped when the record continues.
It's true. I am an America First, liberty-loving Latino. That's why I know this country is worth fighting for. That's why the Chris Salcedo Show will always tell you the truth.
The Chris Salcedo Show, for the news you need to know.
Invest in Ukraine now. Ukraine is rebuilding, innovating, and shaping the future. Because Ukraine is the potential. Kyivstar is Ukraine's leading digital operator. Invests in Ukraine's connectivity, entertainment, ride-hailing, healthcare, and innovation. It's time to think opportunity. It's time to think Ukraine now.
When it comes to my daily heart health supplement, I've got 3 rules. It's got to be plant-based, it's got to be doctor recommended, and it's got to be Super Beets from Human.
Discover why Super Beets is the #1 cardiologist recommended beet brand for heart health support at livehuman.com.
My husband is Miguel Cervantes, who was a firefighter with the Rancho Cucamonga Fire District. That's what he absolutely loved. My husband's cancer is directly related to his service as a firefighter. My immediate thought after he was gone was, how am I going to do this? Tunnel to Towers said that it would be their honor to help me out by covering my mortgage. To say that it's been a weight lifted off my shoulder would be an understatement.
Hi, I'm Ben Cozy. Isn't holiday travel a pain in the neck? You're cramped, uncomfortable, and forget about getting any rest. There's nothing cozy about airplane seats or hard plastic benches, and those so-called travel pillows, they just don't cut it. You don't need another travel pillow. You need Be Cozy, the world's most comfortable neck pillow. Trapped in the middle seat? Wrap Be Cozy around your neck to stop chin drop, bobblehead napping. Smashed up against the window? Fold Be Cozy over and tuck it onto your shoulder for super side support. Frequent flyer miles got you sitting aisle? Turn Be Cozy to the side for the perfect pillow position. Hey, everyone wants to be cozy, so get the world's most comfortable travel neck pillow and be cozy like me, Ben Cozy, You get to be cozy. Everyone gets a Be Cozy. Only Be Cozy has patented overlapping arms so you get double support and the comfort you need in any seat on any trip. Go online right now and get this special holiday offer. Buy one Be Cozy, get one 50% off. So don't wait. Get yours now.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McCaul Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 4 consecutive years. Last year, over 1,800 new Corvettes were purchased from McCaul Chevrolet, setting a record for the highest number of new Corvettes ever sold in a calendar year by one single dealership. Experience why Corvette enthusiasts from all over the USA continue to choose McCaul Chevrolet, with hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide.
You may wonder what U.S. embassies do in foreign countries. The answer is a lot. This is one small example. They were critically important to handling the release of political prisoners from neighboring Belarus. On Saturday, just after the prisoners safely crossed the border from Belarus into Lithuania, I spoke with U.S. Ambassador to Lithuania, Kara Mcdonald. Ambassador, I don't know what it's like for you, because you're an old hat at this, but when I pulled up tonight, and I saw that big, huge American flag of your embassy and all these people getting off, it's just wild. What's it like for you?
It's always an emotional moment, and it's such an honor. It's an honor to be part of it and to support it, to watch these people come out, to know that an American citizen is free tonight because of our president, because of this effort, the Special Envoy John Cole, who has brought this negotiation to pass and brought these people to freedom. Yes, you do know him.
I know him. But I mean, it's like, I don't know, I just can't get over, it's not just bringing an American home from New Jersey, a Jersey girl, but helping
several hundred to date. And we've done this a few times now here at the embassy, supporting this effort with Lithuania, and want to thank our ally Lithuania for facilitating the journey that these folks have, but to freedom. But I have to tell you, it never gets old. It's very exciting. I've been in the business a long time, and this is very rare and it's very unusual. We worked for 5 years to try to get a lot of these people out that came out today. Ales Bialitsky, he's a Nobel Prize winner. We've been working for years. Maria Kolesnikova, we've been working for years to get her out. And the reason we put sanctions in place in 2020 in part was because these people got taken. So it's a tremendous, I think, example of how sanctions have worked and how our president has led this effort to free those who are unjustly in prison.
Well, we're on American soil in Lithuania, so that's what an embassy is. But you actually have to work with Lithuania to get them from the border, from Belarus to here. I mean, what sort of mechanics do you have? What do you have to do to get Lithuania to get on board? Because you got to bring them in here.
Yeah, our ally has been tremendous. Of course, we're NATO allies. Lithuania is a model ally, and they provide a lot of support to bring the folks across the border, to facilitate the border access. It is an EU border, it's a NATO border. So they obviously are working with us on that transfer that occurs. Lithuania has also been a country of safe harbor for a lot of those individuals who have been striving for a long time for more democratic aspects in Belarus, and I think that is what our special envoy has been working with in the negotiation, is for these positive steps forwards towards normalization, and so Lithuania has very much supported that process.
But the nationals who arrived here on American soil, do you contact their ambassadors, and can they come here and pick up their people, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's been the mechanics of it. So we have obviously ambassadors from those countries that serve here in Vilnius. We reach out to them, and they come here to the embassy to greet their citizens as they're released.
Well, it's very exciting, Ambassador. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be able to witness this tonight.
Me too. It's a sheer honor. Thank you, Greta.
Thank you. Coming up, governments are normally pulling teeth to get things done. Now, they're pulling hair. Wait until you see this video when the record continues.
I am a coach and an alum of Girls on the Run. Kids today carry a lot of stress, from school pressure to social isolation to overuse of devices. We create a space where girls can connect, build confidence, and learn skills like managing emotions, setting goals, and speaking up. Each child's experience is different, and families need support. I'm proud to be part of a comprehensive solution to youth mental health. Get involved today at EmpowerOurFutureCoalition.com.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The two big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
$600 a year. If you're 50 plus, you could save up to that much by switching 2 unlimited lines from big wireless to consumer cellular. And we've got the same reliable coverage. So why don't you pick up your phone while I take this hammer and... I can't feel my feet. If you're over 50, get 2 unlimited lines for $30 each. And right now, get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
A mesothelioma diagnosis is overwhelming, but you don't have to go through it alone. Our firm is exclusively dedicated to only serving mesothelioma victims and their families. With decades of success, our team of nurses and attorneys will fight for the compensation and care you deserve. We'll even come to you. This is our MesoCare promise. Call us now so you can focus on what matters most.
Call now and we'll come to you for a free consultation. Call 800-600-3850 or go to mesobook.com.
We have some breaking news. Moments ago, the Los Angeles District Attorney says Nick Reiner, the son of Rob Reiner, will be charged with 2 counts of murder. He could face the death penalty if convicted. And on Sunday, the legendary actor and filmmaker and his wife were found dead in their L.A. home. The bodies had stab wounds. Meanwhile, sometimes we like to check in on other governments around the world just to see how are things going.
Compañeras y compañeros.
Yikes, that was quite a scene yesterday on the floor of Congress in Mexico City. You can see lawmakers shoving each other and pulling hair. What were they fighting over? Transparency reform. Coming up, you're not going to believe what showed up in Ohio this weekend, and it was caught on camera. That one, the record continues.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist-recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Falling down stairs can be disastrous. Acorn Stair Lifts has the solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn Stair Lift, the world's leader in stair lifts. That's right, don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stair Lifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Now you can safely ride with your Acorn Stair Lift.
Now I don't have to worry about him climbing those stairs anymore.
And our Acorn Stair Lift was very affordable. Our Acorn Stair Lift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn Stairlift has a padded seat and backrest for maximum comfort. It easily folds up for access to the stairway. 5 safety sensors stop your Acorn Stairlift if there is something in the way. And it even runs during power outages.
I am king of my castle again.
You'll be working directly with the world's leader in stairlifts. That's right, there's no middleman. Acorn's trained technicians professionally install your stairlift directly to the staircase. In most cases, in 2 hours or less. There's no need for special construction. We don't leave until you're completely comfortable using your Acorn Stairlift.
Don't risk a serious fall going down the stairs.
I was really surprised at how little it cost.
Call for your free no-obligation information kit and quote from Acorn Stairlifts. Just don't fall. Safely ride up and down your steps.
Give your life a lift with Acorn Stairlifts.
Call 1-800-908-4077 right now for your free information kit or visit our website today. That number again is 1-800-908-4077. Call now.
Hurry in for huge savings going on now at Motorhome Specialist, now with 2 locations. Shop and save on over 1,000 motorhomes, starting at $69,995, only at Motorhome Specialist, the #1 motorhome dealer in the world.
Hi, Leslie, the deal-loving llama here. I just got a great deal on new flooring. Lumber Liquidators has the top brands of flooring from Dream Home Laminate to Bellawood Exotics with the best warranties and at incredible prices, up to 60% less than others. Visit your local store or lumberliquidators.com. Worth a drive!
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
An unusual sight in the state of Ohio. This weekend, a rare animal was spotted. It has not been seen in that state for more than a century. The animal, a fisher. A trail camera with Cleveland Metro Parks captured a clear image of the fox-like animal. This animal belongs to the weasel family. It's known for its tree climbing skills. This is the first confirmed sighting in Ohio since the species disappeared in the 1800s due to hunting and habitat loss. The Chris Salcedo Show is up next. Stay with Newsmax.